The core skill you need in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s is marketing. For young or any person to be financially, personally wealthy, there's one simple answer, and that is to run your own business.
This is Rob Moore. He is a self-made property investor, businessman, entrepreneur, best-selling author, world record holder, speaker, pilot, and proud dad who owns 7 companies in property, letting, and finance. He's the best-selling author of Life Leverage and Money and the host of the Disruptors Podcast with some of the biggest guests in the world. Now he's on Kickoff Sessions showing you exactly how he's done it so you can go and implement this today. What's up, people? Before we get into this video, please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment down below so we can get bigger and better guests for you every single week. Let's get straight into the video right now. All right, Rob, let's kick off. Where I want to start is, did you know if you typed into YouTube how to sell, your video is the first video on YouTube?
I'm going to guess that that is my interview with Jordan Peterson.
You're wrong.
Ah!
It's your podcast with Andrew Tate. It's the first video, man.
Well, that's
which
good.
is pretty amazing, right? Because like that's how you can build your audience, build your impressions, grow the entire brand, but also deliver so much value. So it's pretty astounding, though, to be honest.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. So thanks for letting me know that.
What did you learn from people like Tate, Peterson, and so on?
Well, I learned that there's a huge demand to help lost men. I hadn't really personally figured this out because my brand isn't specifically male targeted like Andrew Tate's is. But yeah, both of those have shown that there's a lot of men struggling with their mental health, their focus, their direction, their output. And those 2 men, I think they're probably the biggest 2 in the world for influencing young men. Obviously, I learned different things getting to know them both personally. They're very different types of people, different communicators, different thinkers. Andrew Tate believes in something that I think is very, very empowering. And I don't think he's often given the credit he should be given for this, because this was how I became an entrepreneur. And that is full ownership, full personal responsibility. It is your fault. Something goes wrong, you own it. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, it wasn't my fault. It was the government's fault or whoever's fault, my boss's fault. And I understand that something can happen to you and it's not necessarily directly your fault, but your response to it is your fault. And that's where you're responsible, i.e., you are response able and you choose to respond in a way that owns the situation. Because if you don't own your response and you blame someone else for it, you can't fix it. You are not in control of it. And that's something I would probably, whilst I've not heard Jordan Peterson say it in those words, I would imagine he thinks exactly the same.
It's a personal accountability, right? Which I think a lot of young people, so I'm 27. I know you started out your journey around 25, 26, getting into real estate, roughly similar of age. And I think there's that gap amongst our age group that they lack the personal responsibility and can pass it off on other people. Now, that inflection point usually comes from the pain, right? It's from you having to get into real estate, getting different aspects. So usually it takes some time for young people to get to that stage. So there is that kind of clash between guys taking the action and knowing what to do and then having the tools, right? And this is why your podcast has been very helpful for younger people to figure out what to even do in those instances.
Yeah. Is it an age thing? I sometimes think it is, because I sometimes think some of the younger generations have had it very easy.
100%.
And that's not their fault, by the way. You know, you are a product of your environment. I like to, if I'm feeling if I'm indulging in my own self-pity, which occasionally I can do in my mind, and I like to catch myself doing it quick, I like to remember that, you know, our grandparents and their parents, they fought in wars, 2 wars, very close together. And, you know, that hardship created very strong people. And now we have so much ease in the world, probably until 2020. I think things got a bit hard again. But up to 2020, for 2 decades, maybe more, for most of civilization, certainly Western society, there was no real hardship. So because things are so easy, you end up distracting yourself by being a bit woke or criticizing other people and becoming a troll, or oh well, I deserve, all these this entitlement. But it's also not an age thing, because I know people who are 50 who are like that, and I know people who are 21 who are hustlers. So you can always break the mold. What you don't want to do is, you don't want to, as an individual, take on the identity of your generation, because you are an individual. And I'm seeing lots of really young, hungry people, which is refreshing. So I'm not going to be one of these guys just because I'm 44 and I'm whatever gen before baby boomer. Because there's people my age who are lazy bastards, entitled bastards.
100%.
So I'm not going to
doesn't go away, right?
That says that. And you're right that pain will force the decision, the big decision, leaving the husband or wife, leaving the employment, moving to another country, whatever the big decision that we have that is hard for us to make, the lowest point in pain will push that decision. I've been a hardcore coffee addict, I don't mind saying it, for at least 6 or 7 years. Hardcore, i.e., wherever I went in the world, there had to be a Costa coffee or I wasn't going. And then we ended up getting this really big Costa coffee machine, which fit in a huge suitcase, and taking that where they didn't have a Costa coffee. We'd have to plan my trips around it. I'd have to have it at 6 a.m. as soon as I got up, or the world would end. And about a week ago, I started getting really cloudy thoughts. Like, imagine what it's like to take your hand and try and hold a cloud in your hand. That was what my brain was like. It couldn't hold a thought. And I had a boxing match this year, and people were like, oh, maybe you got hit in the head too much. And it was like, I don't think so, because I would have felt it. So I gave up coffee that morning because my brain did not work properly. To me, that is way more painful than not having a coffee. So I immediately gave up coffee. Immediately, it's done. But I could have done it for 7 years and I never did it because the pain wasn't big enough, and now the pain is. So there's a live example. But here's what I would say. If you can not wait for the pain and not wait for the event and actually make the decision you know what you want to make anyway, you're going to be in the top 0.1%. Like, if I could have given up coffee without my nebulous, distracted mind, I would have owned that situation. But I had to wait until something happened to me. I had to wait for my dad to have a nervous breakdown in 2005 before I finally got into entrepreneurship and got into property. So I have this little saying: don't wait for the event, make the event. Anyone listening now, you know that big decision. You know what it is. It's right at the top of your mind. You've been thinking about it a lot. You know what you've got to do. But if you keep waiting and waiting and waiting, in the end, someone who you love is going to die of, of cancer, or you're going to get fired, or someone in business is going to screw you over and you're going to be left with nothing, or you're going to go bust because you waited and waited and waited and waited and waited. And that's what I would say. Don't wait for the event, make the event.
Richard Cooper, who was on your show, he was on my show too, he often says pain comes from, the wisdom comes from the pain. So usually people wait until they get the hard event and then they start learning from it. But to your point, you can be proactive with this, right? But one thing I've really admired by your work is how adaptable you are, number one, from going from property into the online space, but also how hungry and ambitious you are. So you said you're in your mid-40s now, and it's never slowed down. And you kind of have that kind of like entrepreneur mindset, which is you don't see that often in Ireland, where I'm from, or the UK, maybe as frequent. Why do you think you kind of have that constant drive and and you haven't slowed down?
This is maybe not the answer that people would want to hear, but it's the truth. And the truth is, because I'm very hard on myself, I batter myself to a pulp every day of things I should have done better. And that sat with me since I was probably 12 or 11 or 12 years old. And it's just part of who I am. Sorry?
Like what? What in particular?
Like, what do I beat myself up about?
Yeah, so would it be kind of micro examples, or would it be more kind of like macro, kind of big examples of
everything.
Back in time?
So this morning I've had 2 or 3 reasonably serious things that have gone wrong. Instead of thinking it's their fault, I always say it's my fault. And like I said earlier, that has an upside because I'm personally responsible and I know if I own it, I can change it. However, that's a difficult thing to always experience because it's a relentless pecking away at how good you feel. Or I wouldn't say it definitely doesn't damage my self-worth, but I am relentlessly hard on myself. And this has happened. Everyone else is going, it's their fault. But I'm going, no. But I had a decision I could have made a few weeks ago, which would have changed that outcome. Therefore, it's my fault. And then inside I go, fuck, I knew better. And if we have a social media post that doesn't go viral, because they can't all go viral, but like I expect everyone to go viral, but they can't all go viral. It originally comes from when I was the fattest kid in my year at school, and I didn't get any sort of attention, love, praise, recognition, and respect. So because of that, I hated myself for that, because I was the person that wasn't getting that. So I saw it as my fault, even though you could argue, oh, well, I didn't know that drinking Coke could make you fat, and I was a nice person, so maybe I didn't deserve this. But I couldn't think like that. I was always just self-critical. So I'm very self-critical. And I mean, the good thing about that is I'm probably one of the fastest people you'll ever meet at fixing a problem. And I don't shy away from problems. But part of that is because I want to get rid of the pain of the self-criticism. So it's good and it's bad. And that's always been with me.
All right, people, we're just going to take one short little break for a little update about Podcast University. So if you enjoy podcasts like this and you want to start your own podcast, head down to the links down below to Podcast University. This is a learning platform that I've built to help people like you build, launch, and scale your own podcast. I wasted many years doing this, making it all up as I go. So I put everything together in a very seamless and easy to follow course for you guys to follow and just learn exactly how to do it. So if you want to bypass a lot of the mess with your podcast, check out the links down below to Podcast University, and it will show you exactly how to launch and scale your own podcast. How do you appreciate the good times when you achieve them, though?
I don't.
You have children.
I don't know what that means. So I won 2 awards. I won 2 awards this weekend: Best Podcast and Icon of the Industry. And immediately I just thought, well, the company that are giving away these awards, they must just want something from me, or they want to use me for their marketing. I would not allow myself to go, do you know what? You have got the best podcast and you are an icon in this industry. And I am an icon in this industry and I have got the best podcast, but internally, I could not let myself do that. So this jump back twice, because your original question was, how'd you keep going? How'd you stay driven and motivated? Like, it is in me through a void. But I learned from Dr. John DeMartini that your voids create your values and you can gain from your pain. So what I used to do, Darren, was I used to hate myself, or I don't hate myself now, I'm just self-critical. There's a very big difference, because criticism is good. But I just used to hate myself. I didn't know how to do that critically and productively. So I've managed to turn it into something positive. But the void is the value, the pain is the gain. So anyone watching or listening, all you have to do is find out what the void and the pain is. Ask, why is that good? It's a good question. Why is that good? And you will find your own path. It's probably not a very motivating answer I've just given you, but anyone watching or listening who doesn't have that void or that pain, they'll be broke. They'll be lazy. They'll be like comfortable. And comfort is the enemy of greatness. So I'm also grateful that I have this. So this is what you need to do if you want to immediately move forward and immediately have drive and energy and focus is, what is the void in your life and how do you turn the pain into gain?
And when you're in those positions whereby you have to make something work, that's when you get some of your best ideas or you see the best entrepreneurs being built. So when I worked in the finance world, my life was cozy. But then when I became an entrepreneur, it didn't matter what I wanted. I had to get the work done. I had to make sure that everything was done correctly because it's my responsibility. And I think that's a shift that most people don't understand in their brain. But for me, observing you, someone who's 20 years ahead, it's like, that's what's impressive is the fact that you've been able to keep on going and going and building. Now, I want to ask you off that, you've had experience in the real world, in property, and also in the digital world with your online events and everything. How would you compare the two now? Because you're still doing both, and the digital world has just been blown up from you across the education platform and everything. Would you nearly prefer that side of the business or still in the property area?
Well, the first thing, Darren, is they're both real estate. And this is what people don't get. Your social media is real estate. Your podcast is real estate. So I don't think I've figured it out by saying it in those words, digital assets and physical assets. But in 2016, I properly got this because I launched my podcast. I also launched my book, Life Leverage. I launched my book, Life Leverage, at the start of January, and I launched my podcast, Disruptors, previously Disruptive Entrepreneur, at the end of January. And that essentially was my official launch of my digital assets. I already obviously had websites, I already had social media, but that was the official digital launch. So they're both assets. They both produce recurring, sometimes passive income, but they're very different because the digital assets, I don't have a lot of loans, don't have any loans on them. I own all my digital assets outright. The cost of producing information, the hard cost, is very low. There's no stock. The real estate business is quite people intensive. I have a team to manage them. We have 1,350 people that rent from us in our management company, and I have 340 units that I own. So that's very people heavy. It's debt heavy. I have tens of millions of debt across my portfolio that's worth tens of millions more than the tens of millions of debt. What we find, though, is when one struggles, the other does well. And that's what I like about having them the most. Well, other than the fact that I enjoy the speaking, the training, the social media, and the content, I don't enjoy the tenants and boilers and gas checks and inventories and dealing with solicitors and banks. So my business partner is much better at me than that, and he does all of that. So that's a fundamental passion difference. But generally, when the real estate business is not doing so well, the training business is a cash cow. I think our best year was, I think it was 23 million in sales, but it might have been revenue. I'd have to double check that, but it's just shy of 25 million, our best year in that digital business.
And that's all cash then as a result of holding actual assets, right?
Yeah, well, that's cash straight into the business. Obviously, it's gross, it's not net. But obviously, with the gross, you can spend a lot more money on ads, you can grow it more. And so the digital asset has often funded the physical asset. So we've used millions that we've made in our training businesses to invest in our physical property business. But then we had 2 periods post 2020, 2 3-month periods post 2020, where the training business, it was just a bit hard. Weirdly, not straight after lockdown, because profits went up quite quickly because we acted fast. But there's been 2 3-month periods where it's like, we didn't draw any money. It was painful. And the real estate business was paying us hundreds of thousands of pounds in that time. So they play off each other well. They're like having a defensive and an aggressive midfielder in football.
What's a lesson in there? Because it's quite interesting, right? Because, a lot of entrepreneurs will make their wealth with one business, going all in on one. But for you, of course, it's all within real estate, but you've diversified mainly your focus, and that's most important as an entrepreneur, right? So your focus has been across getting the properties and then building a learning platform and then podcast, books, everything, so on. So how do you find that in terms of a focus perspective and the lessons you've had from that?
Yeah, I think it's probably accurate to say that you would make money focusing and then you would retain money diversifying. There's a couple of caveats. Number one, if you have a skill, you can immediately teach that skill. So I built a skill in investing in real estate, and then the training business is teaching that skill. So essentially, you're diversifying in terms of a business model, but your focus isn't really being spread too thin because it's the same niche. And that's the secret, because people want to create multiple streams of income without having one stream of income. You have to have one stream of income before you have multiple streams of income. But the secret to getting multiple streams of income quickly and prolifically is to, for example, invest in real estate and get good at real estate, and then that is your income stream, and then teach real estate. So it's the same business, you're just teaching it rather than doing it. You're doing it and you're teaching it. Instead of mastering real estate and then thinking, I need to be a crypto guy now. That's completely new. And that is going to shift your focus away and you're going to be spread too thin. Whereas, let's say I go and view a property to buy, I can film it for social media so I can buy it and teach it at the same time. And I wrote about that in my book, Multiple Streams of Property Income, because that's the nuanced detail that's very specific, but so important where people get it wrong. Because they're like, well, I'm trying to get multiple streams of income. I've got 5 different things that they're doing. They're getting it wrong. And fortunately, that's what I did, and that worked. And then from real estate training, I can do business training. I can do social media training. I can do podcast training. And there's all sorts of other training businesses that can kick off the back of it. I generally, as soon as I feel like I know something, I'm going to teach it. One, teaching makes me feel alive and valuable. I was in the car, like I have a driver, and I had an event where I was driving myself. So I couldn't work, but I don't really like doing nothing. So I thought, well, I'll line up a load of my Rob.team members, gold members calls. And let's say I had 9 calls on the journey down. And every single one of them, I got them out of their own brain fog of overwhelm, because everyone's overwhelmed right now. And I got them really clear on the one thing they need to do. And I felt amazing. Like, considering I hadn't had coffee that day because I've kicked coffee and my brain's like a fucking walnut, just a dry walnut. And I got this real emotional, I got this literally high from helping these people, giving them clarity. So that's one reason why I immediately teach after I learn how to do. But the other reason is because the money's fucking good and the overheads are fucking low. So I waited until I'd done, 400-500 episodes. Then I launched a podcast agency. Wait until I've got 1 million followers on social media. Then I launch a social media course. Why wouldn't you?
All right, guys, one short little update for Voex. I want to give a short little overview about my own company, my media company called Voex. So if you are a company or you are an enterprise looking to grow your brand and looking to grow your podcast, feel free to reach out to work with us at Voix. What we do is a fully fledged end-to-end management of your podcast. We take care of the strategy, the consulting, we take care of the growth, the management, we take care of all the editing, all the boring stuff so you can focus on creating good podcasts and growing your brand. If you want to grow your podcast and get to new users, if you want to grow your business, generate more revenue and all that good stuff, check out the links down below to Voix. You can follow through to schedule a call with our team, or else you can fill out the application form to see if you're qualified to work with us. Thank you. Of course, 100%. Because I think the issue here is that people don't want to go too deep on their initial idea and they face the first barrier. And I learned this from Justin Waller as well. They reach the first barrier and they say, fuck this, and they get off and they go off into something else. And that's when they're just niche hopping. So that's the difference, right? And that's why I wanted to ask you, because from years of you doing it, you can stay narrow in real estate, but then go wide, as well as bringing in those different lessons. And that's the difference, right? That's the difference in amateurs and pros. Pros put in the time, and how many barriers have you came up to in the last 20 years, right, that you haven't walked away from? That's the difference.
Yeah. I like to ask the question, why is this good? So you hit a barrier. Your instinct is to go and find something easier that you haven't hit the barrier on yet. But instead, if you ask, why is this good? Well, this is good because it's given me resilience. This is good because other people probably quit at this point as well. So if I don't, I'm probably more successful than other people. So anything you perceive as a barrier, a blockage, a challenge, or a difficulty or hard, just ask yourself, why is this good? And if you answer that properly, you'll immediately see the upside and you'll immediately move through that barrier. Because that is what people do, Darren. They go, oh, I'm going to be a real estate investor. They hit their first big barrier. They go, it's shit, it doesn't work. This course was crap. It's the wrong time. The taxes are too high. They blame someone else. And then they go, oh, I'm going to be a Forex trader. And then they hit their first, they lose some money. Oh, my mentor got it wrong. And you've just got to get through that first barrier. And then everything is a little bit easier from there.
And then, to be honest, every time you get through another barrier and you come to another one, it's not as painful, right? Because you know that it's part of the journey. And that's part of the entire complex with it. Now, I want to split into the new book. So Money Matrix, if I'm correct in saying. What was the ideas behind it, kind of philosophy behind it? Because you've been exposed to so much different verticals. You've made so much money, you've generated so much revenue, and you've seen people struggle as well at the same time. So what was kind of philosophy here you're thinking?
Well, hopefully the title says what the philosophy is. Money Matrix. And that's not me patronizing the answer, but if it doesn't explain the philosophy, it's a shit title and I should change it. And I still have time to change it. So the concept of the book Money Matrix is to understand the money matrix, i.e., how the money system really works, like the matrix, and then learn how to escape the money matrix so you can become independently, personally wealthy. But in order to beat the system, you need to know how the system works. And most people don't. So I wouldn't say it's an expose of the system, because what I've said about the system is not a new revelation. It's just how the money system works, how money is created, its debt, how inflation pays off debt, how the government use money printing to pay off their own debt. So if you get the bank's money and you have a mortgage, they're paying off their debt with money printing. Therefore, they're paying your debt off with money printing. How to understand that money printing kills the value of your money, but also kills the value of your debt. Therefore, if that's leveraged against real estate, increases your equity. The inflation increases the cost of living, which pushes rents up, which means if you have real estate, your rents are going up. So it just explains how the money system works and how you can turn it to your advantage and become independently wealthy.
What's the advantage of going super deep on understanding how money works? So I know this myself, right? I know the answer myself, but for the average person, why do they want to know how the system works to be able to beat the system?
For example, I've got this trying to grab a cloud brain fog. But if I was an expert on the brain and I knew exactly how the brain works, I would know what that is. I'm guessing it's coffee. Other people are guessing is I've had too many punches in the head this year. I'm testing at the moment. But if I was an expert on the brain, I would immediately know the problem. So if you know how money works to that level, then you immediately won't be in debt. Well, I say immediately, obviously, you've got to then change your behavior and then you've got to deal with your emotions. But once you know how the system works, you know how to get out of debt or you know how to make money. So it's
you also know what to avoid, right? In that instance as well.
Yeah. You know the difference between an asset and a liability. You know where you should and shouldn't invest your money. You know the government and central banks' ulterior motives. You know how they make money on your money, so you can learn how to make money on their money. So if there's a problem with a car, you don't know how to fix that problem unless you know that engine so well that you can find that very possible, it might just be a sensor. But a lot of people think, well, the engine's fucked. Well, no, it's just the sensors telling you that the engine's fucked, but it's not the engine, it's the sensor, which I've learned recently interviewing car people. So this is why you need to learn about the money system, because how can you beat what you don't know?
What's the practical step there for young people? So understand exactly like how central banking works, everything, and then building your business around that.
Really, for young or any person to be financially, personally wealthy, there's one simple answer, and that is to run your own business. Whether it is a shareholder with a partner, I have a partner, so I run my own business with a partner. That's why we dominated real estate locally, and we became the biggest property training company in the UK, because we are able to do both because there's two of us. I'd always choose two over one, 100%. But when you run a business, you pay tax later or last or never. When you are employed, you pay tax first at source and you see what's left. And by the way, billionaires don't admit this. I did a video that went viral on Instagram about this, because billionaires won't tell you this, but I'll tell you the truth, because I've interviewed 21 of them and I've got billionaire friends. Billionaires, one of the reasons they got rich is because they figured out how to pay no tax. Because you can't get rich giving half away in tax all the time. You can't. It's just too debilitating. You go up a bit and then you go down. You go up a bit and then you go down. So if you want to be really rich, you have to learn how to get your taxes down, and you can't do that as an employee. By the way, there's nothing wrong with being an employee. I love my employees, and by the way, some people should not be entrepreneurs. It's the worst decision ever for a lot of people. They can't take the risk if they're not self-motivated. It can be a really bad move. It's not for everyone. It's for me, but it's not for everyone. But the price you pay for being employed, I always thought it was being told what to do was the biggest price that I'd pay. But I get told what to do now, and I run my own business. I get told what to do by my wife, my business partner, my MD, my client. You're always beholden to someone. You think you can start your own business because you don't want to be told what to do. You are in cuckoo land. You are deluded. And I soon learned that. But the biggest reason is the tax. And that's how you get rich. Because you don't get rich making money and giving it all away. You get rich making money and keeping it. And tax is giving it all away.
My first two hires on my company, one was a lawyer, one was an accountant.
There you go. That's very smart.
It was the two best decisions I've ever made.
Yeah.
You made a great point though, because it's not for everyone. It's not the lifestyle for everyone. And that's a big issue I have with my generation, that they portray this lifestyle to be everything. And I like to say you switch to 9 to 5 for the 8 to 8. And it's 8 to 8 if you're lucky, right? At the best of times. What is like the core skill that you wish you built in your 20s that other people should build?
Okay. So thankfully, the core skill I built at age 27 was the right skill and the answer to this question. Now, I could argue both of these points I'm about to make. The core skill you need in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s is marketing. The step behind marketing is communication. you're probably not going to be great at marketing if you're not good at communication. And you want to be good at communication publicly, i.e. public speaking or influencing through your words. So I'd probably say it's communication at the very top, marketing directly beneath it, sales beneath that, and then good lawyer, accountant, etc. beneath that. If you imagine a shop, well, if there's no sign on the shop and it doesn't communicate that it's open, no one's going to go in it. So that's maybe the communication. If this shop's open for business, but no one knows where it is, that's marketing. Only once you know it's a shop and you know where it is, can you go in and buy something, i.e. the person who owns the shop can sell something. So I got married in a Tom Ford suit, and I went into Tom Ford because I knew I wanted a Tom Ford suit. I knew it since I was 21 years old. I wanted to get married in a Tom Ford suit, and I wanted the one that he wore Daniel Craig wore in Bond. I think was it Skyfall? The grey one with the wide lapels. I already knew all this shit. That's marketing. That was already done. Had I not known any of that, I probably wouldn't have gone into Tom Ford because it's not very easy to find in London. By the way, when I went in, they had me for a waistcoat, 2 shirts, a tie pin, 2 ties, a pair of shoes. So that's good upselling, cross-selling. But none of that would have been any good if I hadn't have gone in the shop. And that's marketing. And that, by the way, everyone's like, oh, well, I'm building a website. I'm just checking out my logo colors and I'm just doing a bit of research. And yeah, I'm just figuring out how I can use ChatGPT and I'm just doing some. No, marketing, generate leads.
Mm-hmm. What's your first protocol on that? Because like my approach to this has always been content. For me, it's always been generating content, creating content through the podcast, through short form, and we've been able to build an audience through there. So it's just communicating through speech, and then I went into writing. But what would be your principle in that? Like, where did you start that from? Was your books maybe?
Yeah. So I would definitely say I would agree with you. Where would you start in marketing content? Why? Because it's easy. Anyone can do it. Even if you think you can't, you can. And it's not as technical as like trying to create a sales page or trying to convert someone into a customer. Content can convert. Good content will convert. But content's the first place to start. And that was the question you asked. Now, in terms of which type of content you start with one which is most natural and easy to you. So you and I, we're happy to speak live on video and audio. Live, not recorded. But other people might be like, well, I can speak, but I need to plan it, so I need to record it. So that person would do a pre-record. Other people are like, yeah, well, I much prefer long form. Fine, write a blog, article, maybe shorten it slightly for LinkedIn. Others might be good at short form. You know, the younger people are really good at short form, so do that. So you just start with your preferred method of communication so that you don't procrastinate, so that you actually get some content out there. And then you can repurpose that later. Spread it. You know, we do long form interviews, as you know. We just had will.i.am, Robert Kiyosaki, John Fury, Paris Fury. And we'll do between 45 minutes and 2 hours, one piece of content, an interview like this. And then my team will chop that up into 50 or 100 sometimes bits of content, Instagram reels, Facebook reels, TikTok videos. So that's my preferred method is to do the long form and then let other people cut the short form.
100%. It's impossible to lose at that stage. If you have that amount of volume, and that's what I'm always talking about on our podcast, if you have that volume, it's impossible to not get your message right off over time. You get better, you look back on your episodes, you try not be an idiot in the process, you improve, right? And that's a perfect way to finish up this conversation because you need quantity to get quality. And only by doing the quality, then you become someone of quality over time. So, Rob, I want to say a massive thank you, sir. I really appreciate your time. I want to wish you the best luck with your new book. And I want to do our next session in person, maybe from the UK, if I travel from Asia. And I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.